Hi all of you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine channel, your favourite place for the latest scuba diving news and gear reviews. Welcome to Ask Mark, also our scuba diving Q&A, so if you do have any scuba diving questions, by all means pop it down in the comment section underneath this video, use this Ask Mark hashtag in your comment. I'll try and get to it as soon as I can. I know I've missed a few questions, I apologise for that, but the community does a great job at answering questions as well, so if you do see any questions that you do know the answer to, by all means let them know, and if your question is interesting or just something that I've never really answered before, I'll try and turn it into a video. But this week I'm answering a question from Jeff about when you should replace your hoses. So Jeff says, do MeFlex hoses need to be replaced regularly? One service tech I spoke to said they need to be replaced every 5 years. Can't find anything on their website or brochure about it, so I wonder if it's an obsolete news related to the rubber failure issue they used to have. So yes, you might find in the broadness of the internet that some MeFlex hoses, it was like 5-10 years ago, they had an issue. I think Alert Diver, like first, or when the Alert Diver article came out, a lot of people were very hesitant over MeFlex hoses, but I think they changed it since. The internal lining of the hose, because I mean all hoses are just multiple layers of different things and they have braided sections and all that, but the internal lining, I think it was a polyester compound, I believe it could be, I forget, but it would harden and it would crumble. And people found these, one, the hoses were leaking, and two, granules were, if you kind of did that with your hose, these yellowish granules would come out, and that was that internal layer, basically just decomposing. But yes, the industry standard recommendation on how frequently you need to change your hoses on your regulators is every 5 years or 500 dives. Now granted, some hoses will probably last a lot longer than that. However, it's one of those things, they're not ridiculously expensive. And it's a matter of the one time that they're gonna go wrong, it's going to be whilst you're using them, which means you're going to be underwater and you're going to be breathing from it. That's not when you want to find a fault. So I'd rather change the hoses sooner rather than later. But yeah, the current industry standards for both MeFlex and rubber hoses, and any hose basically, is 5 years and 500 dives. That way you're nice and safe. There's very little chance of the hose itself corroding and just failing, because they do fail over time. And yeah, you just keep your regulators at a very comfortable, confident, that's not really the right word, but good working order basically. Obviously if there's any damage to your hose, MeFlex hoses and braided hoses in general, sometimes you can find, I think most of my hoses are okay, I don't really have any Duff hoses that I can show you, but if they're damaged and scraped and too many of the braids are coming loose, you can feel them, they're quite sharp, so then it's worth changing it. If it's a rubber hose and there are any deep gouges, where if you brushed up against a shipwreck or something, or a sharp rock or whatever it is, if there's any kind of damage to that outer rubber coating, especially if you can see the braid underneath it, it's definitely worth changing. And any rot as well underneath hose protectors is a prime example. I'm not a huge fan of these Mares hose protectors because they're really hard to move. But if you do have any hoses with hose protectors, definitely remove them. Or you don't necessarily have to remove them, you just have to retract them from time to time. Even though the hose may look perfectly fine throughout the rest of the body, underneath that hose protector, you have no idea what's going on. I'm going to have to cut this thing off. So any kind of damage, or it looks kind of nasty. They often crack as well, usually around where it kind of starts, where there's an unusual amount of like pull and force applied onto the hose. If there's like cracking around there, I usually ditch it. And yeah, obviously any cuts or scrapes out of it, it's just worth changing it. Any bulges as well, because that means that the internal lining has developed some kind of a leak, and then it's the mesh layer on the inside is still containing it, but it'll of course start to balloon from that point. Obviously don't take that scuba diving. One thing that some people do notice, which isn't actually a fault, is especially on high pressure hoses, I don't know if I have any rubber or any skinny rubber high pressure hoses, you can get little pinholes all the way down the length of the hose, and especially when it's brand new, sometimes when it's brand new you can actually get some adhesive that comes through those little pinholes. That's perfectly fine. That's just the hose has probably been like warmed up or something, or yeah, sort of warmed up in transit or whatever, and the adhesive just kind of loosens a little bit. But when you first take a hose diving, you pressurize it, you jump in the water, and you can see like bubbles coming out of these little holes. If it's like a steady stream of bubbles and it continues to bubble, there's something wrong with that hose. If it's like the odd bubble here and there, that's kind of okay, especially if they're at like regular intervals along the length of the hose. That's just the way that the hose is designed, because the external shell and then the internal core on the inside, as it's just kind of expanding with the gas pressure and whatnot, the air is escaping from that like central section. You'll get the opposite after your first dive. Depressurize the regulators, you get a fresh cylinder, you then repressurize it, and you may find some moisture weeping out of those little pinholes. Again, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, if you like just kind of feel along the length of the hose, if there's any lumps or bumps or any kind of weirdness, you'll often find like numbers and letters stamped into it. That's okay. But yeah, anything weird or wonderful is worth changing those hoses. And if they've been like improperly stored, because it's really hard to tell what's going on the inside of a hose, and that's quite an important part of the hose for obvious reasons. So humid environments, if they've been left with like wet and like moisture on the inside of them, it can rot from the inside out, which is obviously a bad thing. If they've been left in like really hot temperatures, that can be quite bad. Really low temperatures as well can make them a bit more brittle. If they've been left in the sun, UV light is going to damage that external shell. So yeah, just look after your hoses. And yeah, the industry standard at the moment is replace them every 5 years or 500 dives, whichever one comes first. But yeah, granted, some hoses, I've got hoses that are definitely older than 5 years, and I probably would dive with them. However, is it worth it? Not really. Hoses, they're not ridiculously expensive. They are an extra cost, but yeah, the official guidelines at the moment is change them every 5 years or 500 dives. Yeah, it's important that you obviously look after your hoses. I've been through a few where yeah, it's usually like overhead environments or shipwrecks or something, and yeah, if your hoses are a bit too slack, you've got a bit too much sticking out over your shoulders, they can get caught on things, and yeah, the rubber protective coating is doing its job, but after that dive, you notice that you have to check your hoses between dives just to make sure there isn't any like wear, tear or damage. If you do find that damage, it's simply not worth taking it for a dive. But yeah, I'm not surprised that your service technician brought it up, because yeah, that is the industry standard at the moment, to change your hoses once every 5 years. So yeah, it's definitely worth setting that reminder on your calendar. Just yeah, 5 years, swap over the hoses. It's easier if you can do it like gradually, do like your primary, then your alternate, and then any low pressure inflator hoses. I mean, if you're flush with cash, then you can do them all at the same time if you really wanted to. But yeah, just to like lessen that, it's worth just doing it gradually over time. But yeah, 5 years is the current industry standard. Any other questions, by all means, pop them down in the comment section underneath this video. Use this AskMark hashtag to get it featured in an up and coming video. Otherwise, remember to head over to our website, scubadivermag.com, check out our magazines, have a look at a subscription if you fancy one. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, do all that good social media stuff. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.